Hello, in this video we are continuing from our last video where we just made one row with a little bit of space between of these different colored squares. And now we're going to create a series of 5 different rows of squares. But when we look at this, we notice that if I make 5, just eyeballing it, I'm probably going to extend past the screen. So now I think I should probably change the sizing of these. And I might want to do 50, I might want to do 75. I'm really not quite sure. And then I think, well, if I did that, it's not that hard. I could just go over here and change this 100 to a 50 and this 100 to a 50, and that would work. But then I would have to change this 100 and this 100 and this 100, and I'd have to change them all. And then what if I decided, well, I really don't want 50, I want 60 or 75 or some other number. Every time I make a change and I have all of these different style elements in line, that's a lot of work. And one of the things we want to do when we create a program is we want to minimize the amount of work and also minimize the amount of work required to make any changes. So for this reason, we're going to actually, instead of using style within the line, like inline styling, we're going to change what we're doing and we're going to create some styling using regular CSS. Now on this editor, we have a CSS little window, but we're going to do something a little different, which is what you would most likely do if you are starting programming anyways, is we're going to add a style space in the head of our HTML document. So all we have to do is we have the head up here where it says the head. This is the opening head and the closing head. So up in that area, and the head is where we have like information that helps define what we're going to type in below. That's basically what's in the head. It's like the brain. Like your brain is up on top of your body, and it has information that defines how your body works and everything. Same exact thing with this. So I'm going to go after the word title. I'm going to just hit enter so I make a little space, and I'm going to type in, let me zoom in real quick here. I'm going to type in a style tag. So first I do the opening one, style, and then I close it. And then I'm going to give myself a few spaces, and then I do a closing style tag. And remember, almost always, if you have an opening tag, you have a closing tag. There are a few exceptions, and we'll get to those later. So in here, I can create definitions of how things will be styled, and as long as I define these the same way as this, then that will work. And we do that by creating what's called a class. So I'm going to make each one of these 5 divs, I'm going to assign it the same class. That way everything in that class will have the same sort of styling. So what I need to do is we'll go div, and then right after div and right before style, I'm going to type this. Class equals, and then in quotes, I'm going to type the word square, like that. So class equals square. And then, like I like to do to make things nice and easy, I'm going to copy everything, including the space between div and class. That way I can just click and paste, and click and paste. So I'm just pasting the same class into all of these. So now what I can do is I can define what's going to happen in that square class up here within my style area. So let's do this. Let's get rid of, just for the first one here, let's get rid of the width and the height. So everything including the semicolon after the height. So now that first one doesn't even have a height. So it doesn't show up at all. My maroon one disappeared because I didn't give it a width or a height. But up here in style, I'm going to do this. I'm going to assign the width and the height to the class. So right under style and before the closing tag, I'm going to type a period. And the period is always the designator for any styling in CSS for a class. So I always want to do a period, and then I'm going to type in the word square. And then here I'm going to do a curly bracket, an open and closed curly bracket. So now I have an area where I can define these styles. So I'm going to type in the word width, and then a colon, and then let's make this one 50 px, and then a semicolon. And notice now it appeared on your screen. It should have appeared on the right side. And then I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to go height. Then I do a semicolon or a colon, 50 px, then a semicolon, and now I've made one that is 50 by 50. I've basically changed it. So now all I have to do is change these numbers, and anything that's in the class square is going to change. Now you may be wondering, well, all of these have the class square, so how come only the maroon one changed? So let me back out and explain. When you have styling, the style is always going to come from the top to the bottom unless you override that styling directly in line. Because sometimes you're going to have everything, for example, be square, but maybe one of those you want to be different. But otherwise, you want all of the other style elements to be the same. So let's say that we had, let's say this last one here, we wanted to keep it 100 by 100. So by typing in the width and the height inside the inline, then basically this overrides whatever comes from here. But like if I get rid of width and height down here for the blue one, then it all of a sudden gets smaller. So when I get rid of these guys, they get smaller. And that's an important thing to remember, that you can override a style that's in your CSS area by just typing in line. And trust me, you're going to do that a lot of times. So I've got that. Good. So now I've got these 5. And let's go ahead and do this. Let's just add the other style elements in so we can get rid of them and have a much smaller little area here of our divs. So under height, I'm going to add in the margin and then a colon and then 5px and then a semicolon. So now I can get rid of those margins. Now the box shadow I'm going to do as well, but I'm not going to type all that in every time. I'm just going to copy it like this. And I'm going to just go under where I did margin. And there we go. And now I'm just going to go through each one of these really quick and delete these parts. Okay, so now I've got these deleted, so it looks a lot nicer. And the cool thing is if I decided to do something else that I want to apply to everything here, I can just make one change here and that'll work. Like if I wanted these to be all 70, then they're all 70. So it saves a ton of time to be able to have your CSS attributes up in the style section and not in line. Now I had to leave the colors because these are all different colors. So that didn't really make any sense to, I could have made a CSS attribute for like square red, square maroon, square green. Then that's a little bit overkill and that's too much typing in the head. So you want to think about being efficient. So I left the color in here and I can just change the color if I feel like it. I can make the maroon one orange, but that's only changing one thing and that'll be much easier than changing all sorts of things. So now we want to make our 5 rows. So we've got 1 row. So the easy way to make 5 rows is let's just copy this entire div. So we're copying the div and the 5 divs inside of it. And then we're going to just go and hit enter and do paste and paste and paste. And that's 5. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. So now I've got a 5 by 5 grid of these squares. So that's the end of this video. However, the assignment though is to turn in or create a grid like this where the colors are all offset. So I'm going to leave that up to you to figure out how to do. It's actually not that hard. If you think about what your code, like how your code here defines what you see here, it's pretty simple to make a few arrangements and adjustments and to end up with an arrangement or a grid that's a little bit offset or offset by 1 on every row that looks fairly close to the one that we saw at the very beginning on the intro of all the videos. So, and it's also posted on today's slide as well, what your goal is. So you did a great job with this video and you're learning a lot about HTML and CSS, and so excellent work.